Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities is an anthology horror series created by Del Toro for Netflix. He also acts as the show's host in a similar way as the Twilight Zone host and creator Rod Serling. Each episode is helmed by a different director. The show in many ways is an homage to the horror fiction of H.P. Lovecraft. It's full of references to Lovecraft's Cthulhu Mythos. The purpose of this video is to explore some of the show's Lovecraftian influences and see whether it successfully captures Lovecraft's distinct kind of horror. Just a warning, since I will be discussing certain plot details in the episodes, I will be going into spoilers. First off, what is Lovecraftian horror? In the world of horror, Lovecraft has attained legendary status through his visionary, nightmare-inducing fiction. He raised horror to a cosmic, existentially terrifying scale through creating an elaborate mythology as a foundation for his stories. The iconic figures of his mythos, such as Cthulhu, the Old Ones, and the infamous Necronomicon, have pervaded pop culture and seeped into our collective imagination in films such as the Evil Dead series, as well as a host of books, video games, and music inspired by his works. By the way, Cthulhu, which Del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities often alludes to, is an octopus-faced entity with wings and human-like attributes. Lovecraft is known for creating works of cosmic horror, a term now synonymous with Lovecraftian. Cosmic horror emphasizes our human insignificance and the limits of the rational mind amidst an irrational universe of dark, unfathomable forces. Lovecraft's stories are often thin on plot, while his characters either die, go insane, or undergo a horrific transformation by the end of the story. The characters only there to convey a sense of human unimportance and cosmic alienation. This is actually a pretty good description of the general trajectory for the majority of episodes in Cabinet of Curiosities. The show includes adaptations of two of Lovecraft's stories, Episode 5, Pickman's Model, directed by Keith Thomas, and Episode 6, Dreams in the Witch House, directed by Twilight director Catherine Hardwicke. Pickman's Model is mostly faithful to the original story and begins in Lovecraft's fictional New England town, Arkham, Massachusetts, which he featured in many of his stories. On a side note, Batman's Arkham Asylum was inspired by this mythic Lovecraftian location. In Pickman's Model, Crispin Glover plays Richard Pickman, a reclusive artist whose nightmarish paintings cause disturbing visions to those who look at them. Honestly, I didn't love Crispin Glover's portrayal of Pickman, mostly due to his comically bad Boston accent, which comes and goes throughout the episode and sometimes to me sounded more like a Cockney accent. I found it just awkward and distracting. The episode makes changes to Lovecraft's original story by suggesting that Pickman's family worships Yog-Sothoth, who in Lovecraft's mythology is a cosmic alien entity with godlike attributes. Even in these changes, the episode goes back to Lovecraft for inspiration by connecting the story with the larger Cthulhu mythos. Episode 6, Dreams in the Witch House, features Harry Potter's Rupert Grint as Walter Gilman. Unlike in the original story, Walter Gilman here has a twin sister named Epperly, who was sent to a kind of limbo for lost souls when she tragically died. Attempting to save his sister's soul, Gilman rents a room in the former house of an executed Salem witch named Keziah Mason. The episode as a whole has for me an overly digitized, glossy look that diminished most of the scares. I do think the episode was going for the kind of gothic, exaggerated, kind of cheesy style that you find in a Tim Burton movie. And let's face it, Lovecraft's prose style was at times absurdly exaggerated in a way that could easily lend itself to parody. I do think it was a good choice to flesh out Gilman's character, but the original story's surreal, dreamlike horror was diminished in favor of glossy, over-stylized visuals. For me, the episodes that most successfully captured that Lovecraftian sense of cosmic horror were not direct Lovecraft adaptations. Episode 1, Lot 36, based on a short story by Del Toro, is a chilling occult mystery set against the dark history of fascism and featuring a Cthulhu-like tentacled demon at the end that is pretty effective. I found the CGI creature effects here pretty convincing and surprisingly visceral. Episode 2, Graveyard Rats, directed by Vincenzo Natali and adapted from a story by Henry Kuttner, ranks as my second favorite episode. Natali, who directed the sci-fi horror films Cube and Splice, takes full advantage of the macabre cemetery setting. Mason is a grave robber who is seeking a quick solution to his financial troubles by stealing any valuables he can find from recently buried corpses. When he discovers that rats are tunneling into the earth and dragging corpses away, he decides to crawl after them and get back his treasure. Director Natale creates a morbid, gothic atmosphere that gives every scene a theatricality, which draws attention to the morbid spectacle of everything you are looking at. Even the acting has a hammy, exaggerated quality reminiscent of a 70s Hammer horror film. When Mason crawls into the cavernous subterranean realms under the cemetery, it feels almost like a theme park ride of horrors. One of the corpses also has a tentacled octopus-shaped necklace or amulet, which suggests that the corpse was some kind of priest or devotee to a Cthulhu-like otherworldly and malevolent entity, again connecting back with Lovecraft's mythos. The grotesque monster rat that pursues Mason scared the crap out of me. The nightmarishness and absurdity of it all was also kind of funny, but in a way that didn't diminish or take away from the horror. The episode's labyrinthine, subterranean atmosphere of escalating horror beautifully translated that Lovecraftian sense of existential dread and grotesque, visceral horror. Episode 3, The Autopsy, directed by David Pryor and adapted from a story by Michael Shea, lives up to its title by featuring some of the most stomach-churning scenes in the entire anthology. Veteran actor F. Murray Abraham plays Dr. Carl Winters, who is called to examine the corpses of several recently deceased miners who died from an explosion caused by a mysterious object. During the autopsies, one of the corpses is reanimated through an alien parasite which has taken over the body. The parasite explains to Dr. Winters that its species has no sensory organs, so it has to appropriate the senses of its human hosts for pleasure and stimulation. It also consumes its host's organs until they expire, requiring the parasite to transfer bodies and find a different host. The idea of an amorphous alien entity, which resembles nothing human or familiar, which appropriates and consumes our organs as a disposable resource, is absolutely terrifying. It's an idea that has been done many times before, the most obvious example being the xenomorph in Alien. Interestingly, H.R. Giger, who designed the xenomorph, based his concept on one of his designs in his art book titled Necronomicon. The Necronomicon, of course, is the fictional Book of the Dead created by Lovecraft. Even in the most iconic example of this alien parasite concept, we find traces of Lovecraft's influence. The Autopsy was for me the most effective expression of visceral horror and cosmic dread in the entire anthology. Episode 7, The Viewing, directed and co-written by Panos Cosmatos, was definitely my favorite episode by far. I'm a big fan of Cosmatos, who directed the trippy, mind-bending films Beyond the Black Rainbow and Mandy. Like his feature-length films, The Viewing doesn't follow any cohesive narrative logic, the bizarre plot unfolding like the psychedelic hallucinations of a fever dream. A wealthy collector, Lionel Lasseter, played by Peter Weller, invites 4 guests to his home. Lasseter provides them with drugs and alcohol in order to bring their minds to an altered state of consciousness. He has acquired a mysterious alien item and has invited them over specifically to provide insight into said item through their diverse backgrounds. Yeah, the plot is pretty murky. This item exists outside our normal reality, which is why he uses drugs and intoxicants to expand their perception beyond the reality that they know. Peter Weller is exquisitely bizarre as the mysterious collector Lionel Lasseter. He looks like some crazed cult leader. He reminded me of the cult leader Jeremiah Sand from Mandy. Weller perfectly conveys Lasseter's drug-addled obsession with the dark, irrational dimensions beyond reality. His performance for me also kind of channeled his role in the 80s horror movie of unknown origin, where he also played a character driven by his self-destructive obsession. Particularly when he stares, he looks completely warped. By the way, if you haven't seen Of Unknown Origin, I highly recommend it. It's definitely the Moby Dick of killer rat home invasion movies. The episode's surreal, dreamlike atmosphere instantly does away with any logic or reason as to why things happen. The characters all feel like they're being pulled by an irrational force, compelled to participate in some mysterious occult undertaking beyond their comprehension. I won't give away the ending, I'll just say that it involves a nightmarish transformation of mind, body, and reality. I think Lovecraft would be proud of it. Episode 4, The Outside, directed by Anna Lily Amirpour, and Episode 8, The Murmuring, directed by Jennifer Kent, diverge the most in tone from the rest of the episodes. They also break away from the Lovecraftian influence that had driven most of the anthology's themes, concepts, and storytelling. They are each unique episodes, which are less full-on horror stories than surreal, character-based human dramas with horror elements. Del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities is a treat for horror fans. The Lovecraftian mythos, which provides the larger framework for many of the episodes, gives the series a consistent tone, theme, and symbolism, which you don't find in many anthology shows or films. The episodes lack variety because of the strong Lovecraft influence, but the anthology benefits overall by its clear focus and mission as an illustration of Lovecraftian horror. This is not a random collection of tales, but a horror anthology that has an overriding concept, vision, and philosophy behind it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't, please like and subscribe, and I will look forward to seeing you all in the next video.